to hit record. Hey, everybody, we are figuring this crap out. And I think this one you mentioned last time, um, exit strategy or pivoting or retiring. I think I sort of like the pivoting. Let's go a little bit into that as our topic this time and see where it goes. We'll pivot our way into it. Sound good?
Sure.
Well, hello and welcome back. We are here. We are once again continuing the developer journey. I took an overly big breath before I started. That's okay. You didn't hear it, but those that are seeing it live are like, "What are you having heart attack, stroke, what?" And when they're saying that, they're saying Rob, that's me. Rob Broadhead. I happen to be one of the founders of Developreneur, also a founder of RB Consulting, where we take your technology sprawl and all of the pain involved with that. And through simplification, automation, and integration, we find a way to like shrink that stuff down, get it working tighter, faster. And sometimes it's just in this century, if you're still working on like DOS systems from decades ago, or even Windows XP from decades ago at this point. We have a good thing, bad thing. So, good thing today that I'm going to say is that I have like sometimes you have a work day where it's just like bam, 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 stuff gets done. You're just like cranking through things. That was my good thing today. Bad thing is I'm going to call him out. Michael was a little late on getting to this. And so now we're like scrambling a little bit going through our podcast. So there you go. I gave you like, boy, shots fired, but I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself and give your good and bad for the week, for the episode.
Hey, everyone. My name is Michael Malash. I'm one of the founders of Developreneur. I'm also the founder of Envision QA. If you're one of those software companies that are having buggy code, problems with releases, reach out to us. We'll help you write your integration test, your unit test, help you design better ways to test your software so that you have better software releases and happier customers. Good and bad this week. Good thing, I was making very good progress on a recent project. Got almost across the board. Downside, I was so heads down, I forgot about the time and was late to this call.
Well, there you go. That works out perfect. So we've got matching bads, I guess, basically. This episode, we're going to talk about pivoting. This is one of those things that I think if you're in this world, in the IT world, sometimes you don't have to be in there very long before you pivot. Sometimes you do it early on. I think for myself, I've got multiple pivots through my career, which have actually turned out to help me quite a bit. Early on, basically what you would call, maybe like a staff developer or something like that, where I was just like writing code. And then it was really the first couple of places I worked and projects I worked on were all sort of the same ish. And then I ended up doing a pivot and was actually ended up pivoting into management for a little bit. Actually pivoted back and went more into back end, like database administrator stuff. Once again, pivoted, got back into consulting, but now sort of getting into that side hustle. And it's just, pivot, 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 pivot. I've had several of those along the way. Somewhere along the way, I pivoted into writing a book. Somewhere I pivoted essentially into creating a podcast. And so I think these are things that we need to keep an eye out for, and they are not a bad thing. It is, sometimes we get this goes into that the old idea of being a developer with 10 years of experience or a developer with 1 year of experience 10 different times. Sometimes you're going to find whether it's within your company, whether if you're a salaried employee and you work for this company and you work for them several years, or whether you're moving to a different job, you're in a consulting gig or doing side hustles, you're going to pivot, and you need to pivot because you've basically plateaued where you're at. And now there's a couple different ways you can pivot. You can look into a different technology. So you may be, let's say you're a Java developer and you want to pivot into, open up the .NET world and you want to go do C# .NET or one of the .NET technologies. You may do more of a tiered type of pivot where maybe you've been doing a lot of front end and you want to go to middle tier or you want to do back end. And then there is also the role type pivots where it's maybe you are just a developer. Now you want to be a lead or you want to be a mentor or you want to move into management. And then there's also, I guess, in the roles is more the technical roles where it's like you're really writing code, but now you want to design or you want to be an architect or move up those ways. And so there's different ways. And some of these you can see as logical progressions of your career. But really at each of those points, it is some level of a pivot because you're really changing your focus. If you go from, let's say you start out your first couple of years, you're writing code and you get requirements and you write code and you turn those around and you're doing good at it, and now you want to be a lead, there's a pivot there because now your focus is different. You're not focusing on the code anymore. That's still part of it, which is what you really want to do when you pivot, is you really want to grow out of what you are working with, because then you're not going from, let's say, some level of mastery, maybe 100% mastery, to 0% mastery or something like that. Instead, you're going from that, maybe 100% mastery or substantial mastery to something that may be zero, but ideally you do it in that same area so your pivot doesn't lose your momentum, so that you're offsetting the 0% part of it with some of your other skills that allows you to at least start feeling like you're not starting from scratch. And we talk about these a lot. Way back, I don't think we've spent as much time talking about them in probably in the last year or so, but it was things like we referred to them as like complementary skills or tangential skills. If you go to the Developreneur book, we talk about that, and the idea that there are things that you can pivot into based on where you're at. And a lot of times it comes with going to a new project. Maybe it's you're moving into a new project in your organization, and maybe even going into a new version of the project that you've been on, because now they're making some substantial changes that allow you to embrace that direction that you want to go. Sometimes it comes from like layoffs and things like that. Sometimes your team goes from very big to now it's smaller and you're still there, and now your role can change, or the problems that you're tackling can change. And this is one of those things that goes back to having that career roadmap and being aware of where are you at? What are the skills and experiences that you've got? And then what are some of the things that you want to do? And if you're regularly looking at these, you're going to be able to look at what am I doing now? What can I do or am I doing? What are a couple of things that I want to do, and see if there's where those complementary skills are. Where is it, for example, if you wanted to go from Java to .NET, is there maybe a migration project somewhere that you can get a hold of? Or is there something where it's maybe like, it's a cool thing that was part of the company I was at early on, is they had these some places have these brown bag lunch sessions where you learn about a topic. Well, these guys had these like kits. And so what you do is somebody would spend a little time, learn a technology, build this little kit that's basically like, it's almost like a tutorial. It really ended up being a tutorial that was like, here's a little, mini project built in this technology. Here's what it looks like, walking through it. And this is way before video recordings and stuff like that. Well, I mean, people recorded video, but we didn't have it on our computer. We didn't do screen grabs and stuff like that as much. You could do screenshots, but that's what you'd end up building, is a nice little document that had some screenshots, maybe some sample code, not near what you can do today. But those kinds of things are great because you can say, hey, we're in Java all the time. I want to spend a little time. And so I'm going to go learn, .NET. Or maybe it's like you go work on a certification to like round you out. Those are the kinds of things that you want to keep an eye on with the pivot. And don't think of it as a bad thing or as pivoting out of necessarily where you were, but instead almost pivoting into a better situation, maybe stepping up into a better situation. Those are my thoughts. Let's toss that over to you.
So I like how you ended that particular piece, stepping into a good situation. So I'm going to take it a slightly different direction. I'm going to talk about those situations where a pivot is necessary, not necessarily just for a career purpose, but when is it time to pivot because you're in a situation that you don't need to be in? You're overworked, underpaid, overstressed, things are falling down. There are other times when it's okay to make a pivot. And I think Tim Ferriss was probably one of the best places I read is if you don't like what you're doing, or you don't like a particular situation, or you don't like the movie you're watching, stop wasting time. Go do something else. And the same thing applies to our jobs, to our careers, to what we're doing. If you are currently a front end developer and you are bored to death, or you just don't like what you're doing, but yet you like writing database code, well, go look and see what other things there are in like databases that you could pivot into. You can make a lateral move. Yes, maybe go not necessarily to that zero, but maybe to a 5-10%. I know how to do this. You may go down a little, but very quickly will go right back up because that's something you're going to enjoy, you're going to be very enthusiastic about, and you're going to run with it. Whereas your front end job, you're just, oh, do I really want to go to work? I don't like what I'm doing. Or you're in a different situation where the applications you're working on, you like what you're doing, but the house is falling in. Everything's on fire. You're in that constant firefighting mode, and you've been there for a couple of years, but yet like for the last 6 months, it's just fallen apart. Well, maybe that's time to look for something else, pivot into a new role, maybe a management role, maybe something more senior or similar, but for a company that you want to work for. Maybe you want to work for Apple. Hey, there's a job open. Go apply at Apple. Go somewhere else. Look for other opportunities. Pivoting isn't just about where you're moving up the ladder or what you're doing. Pivoting could simply be a state of mind. I'm not happy where I'm at, or I don't like what I'm doing. I need a change. And you can pivot, preferably, you want to pivot up into something that will continuously move you forward. But sometimes it's okay to pivot to the side, make that lateral move, and then reset, and then go back on that journey, get back, learn new things, get happy again. It's not necessarily all about the job. It's also our mental state. We want to be mentally capable of doing the job. We want to be happy. Gets to that quality of life thing we talk about all the time. So as you think about pivoting, or as you're getting into situations, look at opportunities. Look at pivoting as an opportunity, not as a negative, not as, oh, it's a bad thing. I thought about that for years. So when I first got out of college, I swore I would never go back to school. And the first thing I did was I got a teaching job and found out I loved teaching. And what was really cool about it was every semester I was teaching something new. So I was constantly learning, that knowledge thing I constantly craved. But yet I later got into a healthcare job and it got stagnant. I got stuck. So for 6 years, I stayed at this company because everyone kept telling me, you don't want to change jobs all the time because you'll be looked upon as a job jumper, that you're jumping jobs. You're not happy where you're at, so you're not going to stick around. That's a myth. I found that out later in life. Yes, you do want to do the job well, and you basically, if you leave a company in a good state where you have a good handshake, you're get good reviews. So when you do go to the next job and they do call someone for a referral, you're again progressing. You're not getting in that negative state. Now, if you're at a job 3 months and another job for 3 months and another job for 3 months, yes, that's going to look bad on your resume. So make sure whatever you're doing, you give it 110%, and that when you leave in a better place than where you started, just like your code. If you touch it, make sure that it is in a better place than where you left it, and that it's not on fire. What are your thoughts on that?
Actually, there's a really good point in there. That's the idea of sort of sometimes you need to step back to take a couple step forward. Like maybe you like, and it's just like think of it from a very physical point of view. Sometimes you walk into a wall. It's like I got to step back, side over, and then I can start moving forward again. Sometimes, particularly, and this goes into some of our recent other episodes and some of the things we've brought up, and even some of the things you brought up right there, is that sometimes we need to actually step back or simplify, because sometimes we step into something or we're in a situation, whether it's work or project or something like that, and it's just wearing us out because it is too much. We're trying to get everything done. We're trying to spend too much time to get this across the finish line or to address all the issues or whatever it is. There's so many different ways things can go sideways. Sometimes it's easier to say, you know what? It goes to the like one day at a time kind of thing. It's the biblical or the addict type approach of like one day at a time and say, all right, I'm going to, instead of trying to solve this entire project that's going to take months and instead of trying to problem solve all those problems today, I'm going to look at what do I need to work on today? What can I do today? And maybe even sometimes it's like, what can I do the first half of my day, and what can I do in the afternoon, the second half of my day, to move the ball forward? And maybe it's technically stepping back because you're not running at the same pace. Maybe it's something where you are I see this a lot, talk to a lot of people like this kind of situation. Like maybe you're a manager, or in some situation where you're dealing with a lot of meetings and things like that. Sometimes it's like, all right, I'm going to block out 3 hours in my day, and I'm going to go focus on a problem that needs to be solved. Maybe it could be you stepping back from your role. It may be that you're a manager and you're spending so much time managing your team, but you're also, you have split requirements. So you also, or split responsibilities, and you also have some sort of coding responsibility, or maybe even your team is struggling with something and you think that you've got a solution for it, or maybe you do, maybe it's one of those, you've got some junior developers and you're a more senior developer where you're like, hey, I'm going to take some time. I'm going to go take a look at it. So instead of helping them help themselves by, sort of say, well, try this, try this, try this, you can go solve that problem, hand that to them and go, here's a solution. This is how it works. And so now you've taken a step back. You've tackled, sort of done their work for them in a sense. But instead of giving them a fish, you're now going to come back to them and you're going to teach them how to fish. You say, this is how you do it. Now take this and move forward. So sometimes you have to step out of that role. Don't feel like you're too big for your britches, as they say, or don't worry about your title or your label as an employee as much as what is the way to get the problem solved that you're facing. And sometimes it's like, instead of looking at all of them at once, pick one and let's go work on that for a while. It does go back to focus is so often the best way to get to the end. Instead of trying to do 18 things at a time, knock them down one at a time. Just knock it down, knock it down, knock it down. But then focus on that one thing. So you're not split, because we do not multitask to the level that we think we do. There's just too much involved there. Instead, get this focus, like we've talked about in past stuff. Get that requirement done, get it nailed down, get it all wrapped up, and then moved on to the next requirement. Instead of trying to tackle all of these at once, take it a step at a time and get through it. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a really good example. One of the best and kind of worst things about what we do is our ability to quote unquote multitask. And we get into situations not necessarily pivoting our careers, but pivoting in our daily routines. We get into situations where we have so many different tasks we're trying to do at one time. We're pivot, 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 pivot. Nothing gets done. So you have to understand that multitasking is a lie. Multitasking is not getting the job done. Focus on one thing, get it done, then move on to the next thing, get it done. Yes, there can be pivots, but if you focus on one thing and get it done, then that's one thing off your list. Now you have the next thing. The other thing to be careful of when you're doing that is just make sure that you stay focused. And also, this helps you batch things. So if you find out that you're pivoting and you have all these different tasks that you're doing, you can batch them together. And that way you're kind of pivot to one section of work, get that work done, then move on to the next piece. And that can be a different topic for another day. We can talk about batching again, but batching does work with pivoting. Batch your tasks, focus, work on one thing at a time, and the multitasking, this constant pivoting that you may have within your daily routines gets simplified, and you get happy again. You have, a lot of weight gets taken off your shoulder.
Well, hopefully this has taken some weight off of your shoulders and you can pivot back into your day from here, and all of your tasks and things like that, taking them hopefully focused one at a time, knock those things out, get to the end of the day, you're a happy camper. If not, pivot, come back the next day, try it again. I probably am using too many of those words in too many wrong ways, but that's okay because I am towards the end of my day and I'm smelling dinner off off there, and my stomach is starting to pivot me in that direction. So, as always, if you're not too hungry and running off, wow, that was like sometimes a little squirrely. Shoot us an email at info@developreneur.com. Let us know, like, what are your thoughts? What are some topics? What are some recommendations? What are some things you would like to hear? Maybe what are some pivoting strategies that you have used, or other strategies you've used to, you know, put your hair out when your hair is on fire. Some of those kinds of things that happen that are just, they're really part and parcel of our career of being a developer. Even as you become a better developer, those things still show up. As always, go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Bonus material?
So one additional thing, and you kind of touched on it there in the closing, is if you find yourself having problems pivoting within your job, within other jobs, take a pause, take a step back, and look at, if you're worried about pivoting within your roles, figure out back to that kind of plan out your future, plan out your career path. If you're having problems within your daily tasks, look at the tools you're using and see if maybe you can change them or work with the tools better to keep you more focused, to keep you from jumping around, pivoting too much. And then additionally, look at your daily life. We've talked about tools to simplify things. Go back to that, listen to that, and maybe you can apply tools to, streamline your day so you stay focused on what you need to focus on.
That's actually this is such a uh, you know, self-serving kind of thing, but that is so often what we walk into when I talk to customers where it's that technology sprawl. They've got too many things going on. They've got to jump into this thing, they got to jump into that thing, and they got to move over here, and they got to do that. They've got emails, and they've got chats, and they've got 18 different websites up, and they've got all these things going on. And sometimes they've got 18 different tools as well. They're dealing with one tool to deal with the vendor, and another one to deal with the sales, and another one to deal with incoming communication, and blah blah blah. Sometimes, whether it's you or whether it's your organization, sometimes it is time to take a look at those and see if maybe there are some ways to consolidate, to simplify, to get some of those things down. I know this is a little off from a pivot, but it really is in some senses. It's like it's the pivot of, this is what we have, and this is what we do and how we do our business and how we do our jobs and how we get everything done. And maybe you pivot to something that's a smaller thing that says, okay, there's an overlap here, or there's things that we don't really need to do, or there's these things that we used to do, but now they can be replaced, or maybe they're broken now and we need to go fix those so that it'll work. Maybe, I know how many times I've been in an organization that said, oh yeah, we used to have this automated process that sent emails out and it never works, and so we haven't dealt with it anymore. It's like, well, that sounds like that was very useful. Why don't you go fix it, or find somebody to fix it, or recreate it? It's those kinds of pivots. And it may even be with your own personal desktop. Is look at what you're dealing with. Do you have 18,000 icons out there? I don't know why 18 is suddenly my number today, but it is. You have all these icons out there and you're clicking all these things, and you got to open that and like too many windows open and trying to figure out where you're at. And you've got all these virtual screens and you're trying to figure it out. Simplify. Sometimes you're trying to do too much. It does go back a little bit to the multitasking. Maybe you are too multitasking. Instead, you should shrink that stuff down, focus, and it keeps you from all of the switching headaches that you will run into. So thank you for allowing me to do a little ad there, I guess. So as always, we will be back. We are continuing. We're not done with this season. We're going to continue talking about the developer journey. We've got all kinds of stuff. Somewhere down the road, we're going to talk about retirement even, or your exit strategy. So you're going to definitely want to be ready for that one. Even if you just started your career, sometimes it's nice to know that, yes, someday this too shall end. That being said, we're going to get back to it. Leave us comments. Let us know your thoughts, or wherever you would like us to go with these in the future. And we will be more than happy to work that stuff in. As always, go out there and have yourself a great day, and we will talk to you next time around.